Europe is the second smallest of the 7 continents, covering about 2% of the Earth's surface. The name Europe has long been thought to derive from the ancient myth of Zeus and Europa. According to this legend, the great god Zeus, upon seeing the lovely Phoenician princess Europa bathing on the coast, or, according to other versions, playing with her ladies-in-waiting, transformed himself into an impressive white bull and slowly approached her from the sea. This bull was so docile and adorable that Europa put garlands of flowers on its neck, stroked it and climbed on its back. It was then that, to her great surprise, the bull began to run on the surface of the sea, carrying her to the island of Crete. In Crete, Zeus and Europa became lovers and she bore him 3 famous children. Her family in Phoenicia, shocked by her disappearance, sent her brothers to look for her. None of them managed to find it, but they all founded important cities and gave their names to several regions around the Aegean Sea, such as Thebes, originally known as Cadmea after Cadmus, brother of Europa. However, Herodotus does not believe that the story of the Phoenician princess has anything to do with the name of the continent, and in the 4th book of his histories he writes about it. Another thing that puzzles me is why the name should be given by 3 different women to something that is really a single land mass. No one knows where the name comes from, or who gave it to her, unless we say that it comes from Europa, the wife of Tyria, and that she. Theories about the name Europa range from a Greek origin meaning wide view, referring to the expanse of coastline seen from the sea, to the Phoenician word for sunset, since it is said to be the place where the sun sets. Today, as in Herodotus' time, no one can say for sure where the name Europa comes from. To the ancient Greeks, the Aegean Sea and its environs were the center of the world. The Phoenicians used to sail further, up the Atlantic to mine tin from Europe and Cornwall, but to the Greeks, Europe was a dark continent, much as 19th and early 20th century Europeans would later view Africa. Culture, in its most basic sense, emerged and persisted in Europe from at least 20,000 BCE, as evidenced by cave paintings, the most famous of which is the Lascaux cave complex in modern-day France, and by 5000 BCE societies had begun to emerge and peas were being cultivated, evidence of a strong agricultural society. Yet to the Greeks, the peoples of Europe, more than any other non-Greek people, were barbarians, from the Greek word barbaphonos, of incomprehensible speech, a word coined by Homer in the Iliad, Book 2, who included several tribes such as the Balts, Slavs, Albanians, Italics, and most famously, the Celts, which included Gallic and Germanic tribes. By 4300 BCE, megalithic tombs had begun to be used in Europe. By 3500 agriculture was widespread across the continent, and by 2000 bronze metallurgy had been introduced by the Wessex culture of present-day Britain. In 1860 BCE, construction began on the impressive and mysterious Stonehenge. Yet such achievements were not impressive to the Greeks, nor later to the Romans. As early as 78 CE, the Roman historian Tacitus called the Britons ruled by his father-in-law Agricola a rude, scattered, and warlike people, to whom the Romans were bound to bring agriculture and civilization. Julius Caesar had already held the same opinion of the Gauls, calling them mere animals in his description of the massacre of the Euboean tribe along the Rhine. In his Gallic Wars he devotes as much space to the description of the European elk as he does to any meaningful description of the Euboeans, and of the elk he says that their shape and mottled coat resemble those of goats, but they are much larger, have atrophied horns and legs without joints, and then goes on to give the earliest account we have of what would be called cow-knocking, because the Romans hunted elk by prodding them while they were asleep standing up, and they killed easily. Because, being so large, they could not get up on their own. It cannot be said, however, that Caesar contributed nothing of importance to the Gauls and, by extension, to Europe. The historian Durant says, "Remove advertising. Advertisement. For 300 years Gaul was a Roman province, prospering under the Roman peace, learning and transforming Latin, and becoming the channel through which the culture of classical antiquity passed to northern Europe. There is no doubt that neither Caesar nor his contemporaries foresaw the immense consequences of their bloody triumph. He thought he had saved Italy, conquered a province, and forged an army. He did not suspect that he would be the creator of French civilization. The Romans brought their civilization not only to Gaul, later France and parts of Italy, but to all of Europe, bringing them innovations such as paved roads, plumbing, fortified cities with great culture and administrative efficiency, and of course, their language, gradually civilizing the disparate tribes of the different European regions. Tacitus writes of Agricola's efforts in Britain to found schools to spread the knowledge of Latin and how he encouraged the population to build temples and to regard personal hygiene as an important matter by using public baths. He goes on to say that, by degrees the allure of vice imposed itself on the hearts of the Britons, elegant baths, porches, and banquets became fashionable, new manners, which in reality served only to soften slavery, were called the refined arts of humanity by the confident Britons. Yet not all Britons appreciated Roman culture in the same way or accepted its civilizing advances, as illustrated by the rebellion of Queen Boudica of the Iceni, simply the most famous of a long series, in 60-61 CE, which ended with the deaths of over 70,000 Romans by the Romans before being defeated by Paulinus. Despite this, for over 300 years, Roman rule dominated Europe and undoubtedly contributed enormously to what the various countries of the continent are today.